We're just starting the webinar, waiting for folks to come on in. All right, so what we're gonna do is continue and wait for some people to join us. And maybe on YouTube, we'll have a few people as well. Thank you for joining us. I'm with Source Booksellers. My name is Allison Jones Turner. And we are delighted first to be a pre-order source for Saga Boy early on in its beginnings as a book. And now with this beautiful, absolutely beautiful cover, we're celebrating the release today of Saga Boy, Life of Blackness and Becoming with Antonio Michael Downing. And let's say a little bit about him. So he's a musician, a writer, an activist, living right now, I think, or coming to us from Kitchener in Ohio, very close to Detroit. So we wish that he could come across and we could have a celebration of the book here, but we're close enough, I think. His first debut novel is Molasses, and that is also available. And if you want to listen to his music, he performs and composes as John Orpheus. And maybe, just maybe, he'll talk about his new work today. And so he's going to be in conversation with Hanif Abdurraqib, who is hailing from Columbus, Ohio, and is a poet, an essayist, a cultural critic, and we're enjoying hand selling his book, A Little Devil in America, in Praise of Black Performance. I started out learning about the book quite a while ago, and I kept reading it out loud to my family members. So I was so excited for it to be out, and it is now, and we're enjoying hand selling it. But if you'd like to find him online, you can also go to 68to05.com, or where podcasts are found. You can join him on Object of Sound. And recently, he's on the Pineapple Street Studios. So you want to find him online also that way. So let's get ready for a fantastic celebration of Saga Boy and an interesting conversation between these two authors.
Hey.
Hey. And I think you're going to do a little bit of reading for us, eh?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little reading. First of all, let me say honored to be blessed by Source Books in Detroit. I got my Rodman Pistons on. And you said Ohio, but Freudian slip. I think I'm actually in Ontario, Kitchener, Ontario.
Oh,
So just across the border. But that border is very much impenetrable these days. So
okay.
but I miss I play a lot of music in Michigan, Grand Rapids, Marquette. Like I miss being on tour in your great state, and I'm so happy to be welcomed in to celebrate Saga Boy, which is really the story of my life. My grandmother, bless her heart, taught me two things: how to read and how to sing, and those are the two things I do now for a living. So, so she'd be smiling looking down on this moment. So, I'm gonna read a part of the book that's a little bit longer, but I've never really read it publicly, but I feel like it gives you a proper slice of my life coming up at a particular moment. So here we go.
Thank you so much.
This is from Saga Boy. The nigger keeps going offside. The first time someone was blatantly racist to me, I was thrilled. I was playing football at my new high school in Aurora. It was gym class, and I was sprinting my little self up and down the field while the smell of wet grass filled my face. I thought it was going splendidly, but I was also confused. I didn't understand why playing football in Canada involves strange names like quarterback, tight end, guard. In Trinidad, football was, of course, soccer, a very different game. After my third time crossing the line of scrimmage too soon and going offside, a concept no one had explained to me, an Italian kid with a frizzy mullet pointed over at me and yelled, "The nigger keeps going offside." My inside voice said, "I think I've just been racist." Yes. Overjoyed to finally have an experience to go with the word racism, I burst out laughing. Dr. G.W. Williams Secondary School was my third high school I'd been to. I showed up for grade 10 as a scrappy, mouthy 13-year-old. My head was still half in Monkey Town. I was still mispronouncing words regularly, like I had to try really hard to say thief and not teeth. Or when I said Sarah, it came out as Sarah. Too small for high school, I made up for it by talking loudly, lying outrageously, and posturing as a wannabe metalhead with all the wrong clothes. Basically, I'd do anything for attention. I was still getting on Haley's last nerve with my squeaky clarinet. Haley's my stepmom, by the way, my white stepmom. The instrument, black wood and sparkling silver keys, seemed like a magic wand to me. If I could touch the reed the right way with my tongue, finger the stops and keys just so, and blow at the proper angle, I could unlock a clear, pure note. It was a burst of extraordinary light that soothed and puffed up my chest with pride. But it was Junior, my older brother, who showed me how truly seductive music could be. "Put this on," he said, and threw me a pair of blue jeans with a little Rasta dude color stitched into the legs. "We going to a party tonight." My face lit up. "A party for real?" He watched me as if to say, "Don't make me regret this." But what he actually said was, "Be ready for 6. The house was like any other suburban home on the icy street. Winter had drowned the world in white powder, and a crisp, nasty bite came with each breath of air. Everything seemed normal except for this vague, throbbing pulsing from the house like a heartbeat of a giant. Sketches of people's shadows peeked out from behind the snowbanks, puffing smoke or pressing up against each other, sucking at faces in dark corners of the cold. The closer I got to the pulsing throb, the more it peeled my head open. At the top of the stairs, the heat and smell of perspiration and music lifted out of the basement. Down the stairs, it was like we had crossed through a portal to a parallel galaxy. Darkness and bass filled the room like a womb. Everywhere people dance. Some backed up against the walls, men with beers dangling from loose swinging arms, their other hands gripping the hip bones of wide-waisted girls who were tilted over, faces focused, grinding their asses into the men. Gold-linked chains, bright gold smiles, fades in flat-top hair, Clarks and Timberlands on feet, girls in mesh and underwear, flesh searing into my brain, making my body hot and rigid, yelling out when the big sounds start, yelling out together, then back to grinding and expressing their own selves. The sounds coming from the stacks of black speaker cabinets in one corner were rearranging my atoms. Every thud exploded into my chest and seemed to disintegrate and reassemble me from the inside. In the center of the room, a rich cocktail of colognes and perfumes clashed as the grinding came with lifting, hot stepping in dark shades, front foot, back foot, left foot, cock up, knees open and closing slowly. That's a butterfly. Hands stabbing in circles. This is bogle. And the silver furnace exposed too close to our heads. The DJ talking over the song right when it got good, cutting the beat out so everyone could sing the lyrics of the big tune, which is what you call a song. When a song everyone loved came on, they all went mad at once, yelling, bawling, gunshot salute, and then reaching up and banging on the furnace pipes again and again, bang, 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 wheel selector, which meant start it again, so we can lose our minds all over. When the banging got out of control, the owner of the house stopped the music and got on the mic. All massive in general, nabada bang pon the furnace, seeing? Winter time cold, don't bang pon the furnace. Then back to the tune. But when another hit came on, wheel selector, bang, 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 bang. The sight that stole me away from everything was Junior, leaning, half hidden by weed smoke, hands gesturing gunshots at the roof as he and Kingman performed their songs. Seeing him there made me feel like I could be there too. I could be a king in this magic dimension without stepmothers, without classmates calling me nigger, and without squeaky clarinets. Maybe that's how everyone there felt, like they were somewhere they could be free. It felt like a puzzle I had to solve. It had everything I had a taste for: attention, words, music, but I was a tourist, a stranger in this world. I was dorky and bookish and listened to loud white boy music. Kingman asked my brother, "What wrong with the youth, Junior? The boy possess?" "Leave him alone. He young still." Junior would look at me frowning, a little embarrassed, a little concerned, but he wouldn't let anyone make fun of me. Things changed when they realized I could write songs. One day I showed up to their band practice with 2 marked up pages of lyrics. Kingman sucked his 2 gold teeth absent-mindedly as he read them. He had flat top hair with little shapes chopped into it. "This tune article," he said, which meant it was good. Then reading some more, his eyes got wide. "Yo, the little youth is a done. Respect," which meant he liked it. And he looked at me again as if seeing me for the first time. Junior just nodded as if he wasn't surprised. They ran through the song a cappella. It was the first time I'd heard someone rap one of my songs. It was something about having power. Jah give me power, except it was power and terrible, but it was mine. I felt sky high watching them nod and sway as they spit the words, posturing and shaking, then giving each other a bounce, closed fists touching to salute how cool the tune was. When they finished, Kingman yelled, "Wheel selector!" And they pointed their gun fingers at the sky, bang, 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 and they started into it again. These big kids who knew things I didn't know about girls' bodies, Underground parties, knife fights, and being a man were repeating the words I had thought of and written down. Miraculously, somehow, I knew something they didn't. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Life for me that year was like this, perched precariously between the wrath of Haley the Hellcat, a father I loved but could not trust, and a lost brother I recognized less and less every day. But from then on, whenever I could, I escaped into words and songs. It never occurred to me that these were the two things Miss Exley, my grandma, had taught me: how to read and how to sing. These were her gifts, the things she too had needed to survive. So it go.
Oh man, thank you for that. That was beautiful. And I'm especially glad that you read that part, because I wanted to open by talking about like the presence of, the book is so generously populated with people and places, but it feels like the primary point of population is your grandmother. Or at least one of the primary points of population. And so I kind of wanted to talk a bit about, or ask a bit about, what it was kind of like to return to the site of a person and animate them as generously as you did in the book with many people, but particularly with your grandmother.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I ever left her or she ever left me. So for me, it was never a return. It was just she was always there. And the more, I sat back, it's a privilege to be able to have the time to think back on our lives. Most of us, we too busy surviving, and life's only moving one direction. And when I look back and I got that perspective, I thought she was important to my life. But what I realized is she defined the horizons, the contours of my life, and the way I was going to live it. Those first few years where I spent with her were so influential and shaped us. But I feel like that's all of us, right? Our childhoods, our deep childhoods, you can play against it, but the contours of what you're working with are defined in those first, 6, 7, 8 years. And for me, that was all her. So I thought she was important, but when I look back, important was a very slim and poor word to describe what she was. She was, the center of my universe, my emotional, my spiritual universe.
Was there, because you talk about childhood as the center of all things, I think about this a lot because I'm often returning to my childhood for not only the sake of my writing, but for the sake of my understanding my present being in a way, and understanding the kind of the DNA of my many anxieties or fears or pleasures or upsets. And I'm always surprised that my memory doesn't hold up to my own scrutiny. And this works both ways. Sometimes it's kind of like there's more here than I recall, and other times it's like I am adding some romance to something in order to obscure something more potentially horrifying or heartbreaking. And so I'm wondering if in the process of this book, which does kind of move through a lot of big childhood moments, did you find anything surprising or learn anything about yourself and your ability to, move through those memories?
Whew. I mean, short answer, hell yes.
Yeah.
Memory is like a roadmap of our frailty, right? We think that memory is like a video camera, that we record it, we store the file, and whenever we want to remember, we press play, and it's an exact recollection of what happened. But in actuality, how memory works is every time we remember, we reassemble the memory. And us being human beings, we edit, a process as writers we're very familiar with. Yes. And that's how the proverbial fish that was 1 foot long got to be 5 foot long 10 years later. That, memory will, it will serve our ego in this unconscious editing capacity. It will delete things. It will invent things. It will diminish things that are hurtful to our ego or pride or just hurtful. It will enlarge things that make us look good. Or my favorite one is what I call the Vaseline on the mirror technique, where it's like, you see it there, but it's a very hurtful thing. And so memory obscures it so that you know it's there because it can't fully delete it. But it's like a pull focus in film where it's all out of focus and wavy. And boy, when that fog clears, it's tremendous. I'll give you an example. The biggest example of that fuzzy, of the Vaseline on the mirror technique is that I did 250 hours of interviews to write this book. I did that because I wanted to, I knew my memory was faulty. So I wanted to fact check myself. And I wanted to have conversations with people from my life so they would trigger more memories. And I also wanted to let people from my life know what I was doing. So they wouldn't just find out that I wrote about them in a book from like reading a newspaper. They would hear it from me. And so I wanted to involve them in the process. I heard from my brother. He told me, oh yeah, there was that thing on the bus. And I was like, okay, cool. I heard from my other brother, yeah, there was that thing on the bus in high school, and the cops came and talked to mom, who was my stepmom, but their mom. And so I talked to her, and she told me, yeah, there was a thing on the bus and the cops came, but it didn't amount to nothing. And so right now I knew there was a thing on the bus, but in my brain, it was all fuzzy. So I knew that when I talked to my homie, Benfoot, Dave Beneteau, I call him Benfoot, it was like he was right next to me on the bus because we always rode together. We were buddies, and it was a basketball game. And I played for the team, and we had gone to play a game, and he talked to me about it. When he talked to me about it, it absolutely shocked me how much my memory had obscured or diminished what happened. And it did it because it was awful, and I felt a lot of guilt and shame about it. So on the bus, we had just played and lost to a team that we should have beaten. We were pretty much ranked third in the league, and we lost to the fifth team. And I don't know if you know that feeling, but I was not happy. But there were other people that were the coach's favorites, and they were just laughing and joking. And they decided they were going to go around flicking people's ears to get a rise out of them. And I was always a hot-tempered, hot-blooded Caribbean kid. So I was easy to rile normally. But in this case, I was holding it in. They just flicked me. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. They flicked me. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. They kept flicking me. And then I just detonated. And for 20 minutes, for the rest of the bus ride, I was trying to fight them. I was like, you know how people get riled up for 5 minutes, then they chill? That was not me. Once I was there, it was like, I just saw blood as a kid. And I threatened their moms, their dogs, their goldfish, their grandmothers. I told them I know where they lived. They were going to see me. I just went in a shameful tirade. And then my coaches, whose job it was to make sure that people aren't getting bullied on the team, called the cops on me, the only Black kid on the team. But I remembered it as a tremendous, shameful, guilty thing. And I actually left the team. That was the end of my high school career. I played university at Waterloo, but my high school career ended with that bus trip. And I was shocked that when I talked to Benfoot, he told me about it, and it all came clear as soon as he started talking. The Vaseline just melted. But what he told me was like, dude, they used to bully everybody, and we were all cheering for you when you were mad at them, because they used to bully us and no one would say anything, and you were the only one that stood up to them. And so it not only, in that moment in writing the book, this thing that was a heavy load of guilt and shame suddenly was not only clarified, but the weight of it was removed.
Mm-hmm.
And I suddenly realized, whoa, well, it wasn't on me. I was getting bullied. And whoa, like there were all these other people who actually saw me as a hero, even though I saw me as a villain. All this time, I kept that. So that's a perfect example of how memory is, we can't, it's a record of our frailty, a record of our ego, a record of the things that we are afraid to face, essentially. And it definitely is not an exact replica of what actually happened.
Right, never is. There's something that amazed me about this book, and it's the way you kind of maneuvered and managed the writing of, there's just a lot of different lives that are lived in this book, right? There's a lot of different, I think calling them alter egos doesn't really do a disservice to the fact that we all have multiple selves that serve multiple purposes at multiple points in our lives.
Right.
And, what I love about this book is that it does manage to encapsulate so many of the selves that you've had and do it fully. And I'm wondering if there were points in writing it where you wanted to dwell in one place more than you did, or because it felt like, gosh, like, yeah, there was, I wasn't left wanting, but it did seem like, well, this is a full life. This could be like a series of memoirs.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, probably it's like, I feel like the time in Trinidad is like a book on its own. The time, that high school period to when I met my parents again, could be a life on its own. And then me being a man and working and playing in bands and creating art could be a life on its own. But I mean, I to be honest, I didn't feel like I had that luxury. I felt like I'm not going to get another chance to write another book. So, which in hindsight seems silly, but that my feeling was, because you got to understand, like, my impetus for creating the book, it was necessity. Raina Maria Rilke says that the only reason to do a work of art is because you need to. And I was at what you'd call a midlife crisis. I always say I was like trying on potential futures like they were jackets that wouldn't fit. And then I hit upon an idea, and I was just like, yo, until you make peace with your past, you can't know how to plot your future. And that's why I started writing. And so for me, it was crucial to get it all out. Because in my life, outwardly, I was thriving. Like, I was working on like what the Canadian version of Wall Street, we call it Bay Street, but that's where all the banks that run the country are. I was, I had a sweet job there. I was making records, more music than I ever made because I could afford to. And I was building my little underground legend. I literally was like, from the outside, you would think I was shining. On the inside, emotionally, I was drowning. Like, I didn't feel like I understood anything about who I was, or I felt it trapped. I felt imprisoned. I felt like I was suffering, and I couldn't figure out why, because we do, a lot of the things we do it because we think, oh, once I have money, I'll be whole. I'll know what's up. Once I have videos and my albums out and people coming to my shows, oh, then I'll be okay. But I wasn't. And so for me, making the book wasn't a literary venture. Mm-hmm. It was a desperate act of survival, because I realized that I had gone through so much and I'd never stopped to look back. In fact, I'd taken pride in the fact that I didn't look back.
Is it, I think there's like a journey in here that I'm interested in the music. Because you talk about, you're playing music and writing songs from such an early age. When did you feel like you kind of had your break if you feel like you had your break in music, or do you still feel like you're attempting to have your break in music?
Yeah, well, it's all relative, right? Like, I mean, for me, it's all relative. It's like, as you know, it's like you go from being your local hero band and suddenly you're regional in your state or your province. And then if you're lucky, you might get to do a couple national tours and suddenly people know you, you know, across states, across countries.
Mhm.
And but it's all, for me, it was almost like a series of, like, for example, right up to this record I dropped this summer, which is my most successful record. Like, like, people are a lot of radio play, a lot of acclaim in Canada. Like, they put me on the list of most anticipated albums right next to Drake. And I was like, that's ridiculous. But it's almost like 5 years ago, I would have jumped and screamed and danced. But there was such an arduous path of sacrifice to get to that I didn't. I was just kind of like, well, I guess that's where I'm at. And so it's hard to sort of calibrate when the break is. But I could say that I've been on a consistent path of achieving more and breaking to that next level and that next level. But it didn't happen like sometimes for some people. You drop a tune on the video take off and suddenly you go from ashy to classy, like Biggie say. But for me, it was like that's like 12 years.
Yeah.
Of me being like, I think it's like 2008. I'm in my punk band, Gen Militia. We had a top 40 radio hit in Canada, and then that collapsed. And then I've been sort of building slowly and building, defining myself, finding my voice. And really that it's been a long process of getting there. So, I celebrate the process though, to be real. I don't really sit around thinking about, oh, when I get this or that. For me, the music is such a lifelong vocation that I'm like, okay, what's your relationship with music today? Like, how is the song feel in your body? How's your voice? Like, how's your voice feeling? Like, how's your guitar playing? Like, pick up the bass. Let's relate to that today. Like, that's how I see it. It's like I'm in the process, not outcomes, because, maybe 10 years ago, I would have tripped out if all of this were happening. I would. It's not maybe. I would. I'd be obnoxious. But it's my relationship with the art is matured so much that I just, there's a saying in soccer, in England, they say, enjoy your football. I mean, they mean soccer, but they say enjoy your football. And it means like when you're a star football player, there's women and money and coaches and pressure and games and tournaments and injuries and all this stuff. But the mantra they all have to center themselves is, hey, are you enjoying your football? And that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, because if that's the thing that brought you there, so if you stay centered with it and stay here with it, then all the other stuff is just extra. And so that's how I feel about music. It's like, and about all the art I do. I just want to be in a constant communion with it. I don't want to be thinking about it like, oh, I should have done this by now, or I should be here by now, or what I mean? Because that'll just make you miserable, I think.
The one great thing about a book like this that takes us through the journey of a life is that you can sense your priorities changing as you age and as you go through much. And so I'm wondering, as someone who's, as an artist, multiple times has felt my priorities change, and because you kind of opened this door a little bit, talk about the so-called midlife crisis that defined the making of the book. I'm wondering if there's a moment where you felt as an artist that your priorities changed, or where you felt like the constant evolution of the changing priorities that, at least for me, I haven't mourned anything. I'm not like mourning anything that I left behind, so to speak. But I've celebrated kind of the step up or the like caring a little bit less about the things I used to care about. That has been the big thing. But how do you see yourself in that mode as a person of changing priorities?
Yeah, I don't mourn it because I feel like the trajectory of my life has trended towards more fulfillment, more joyfulness, more comfort in my skin. I haven't arrived anywhere yet, but I'm on this journey, and so I don't mourn anything at all, because when I was doing that, I did it. When I was in a van crisscrossing the country, I did it. I did it to the fullest. And we ran off the highway north of Lake Superior, where with no cell service and minus like 20 Celsius. And we played for 5 bikers in a bar in Southern Ontario. But we also played in Southern British Columbia, sorry. You know, we crossed the mountains, we crossed the prairies, we drove around the Great Lakes. Like, when I was doing it, I fully did it. And so I don't feel like I don't miss or mourn for it at all. And I think if I did, it would make it harder for me to wake up inspired. Like, I feel like for me, I always want to wake up inspired about the next thing. You know, you mentioned my grandmother being this omnipresent presence in the book. I didn't know this at first, but when I was reading the audiobook, what I realized was in the Trinidad portion, it's my grandmother and it's the bush, it's the jungle that I grew up in. This wild, like the shades of green, the crocodiles, the snakes, the parakeets. And it's like, the mango tree doesn't say we had mango last year, so no mango this year. The mango tree is always like fresh mango, because that is what it does. And so for me, I feel like that also shaped my mind. When I think about my approach to creativity, I always want to wake up inspired by what I have to do that day. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think if I was spending time going, oh, I missed that or I missed the other, I wouldn't be as inspired for what I have to do now. And I think that's a bit of a secret sauce towards always staying fresh and staying creative, because you challenge yourself. Like, I'm always going, what's next? What's the next thing? I had a moment where I had this poster where I played one of these shows. I know you've seen these punk shows where it's like 18 bands on it. Yeah. And I looked at the poster and I remembered that from 2007. And I literally went through and remembered everyone from every band I knew, all the promoters, all the fans that I could remember were there. And I looked them up on Facebook, and not a single one of them, maybe a whole ecosystem of 70 people, not a single one of them was still playing music.
That's wild.
And I think that's what's different about me, is that I'm like that mango tree, where I'm just kind of like, well, I made mango last year. Does that mean I should stop making mango? Well, what else does a mango tree do?
Yeah. I want to take the kind of like back end of this, or the closing end, and talk about basketball a little bit, because we both love basketball. And you played in college. What position did you play, first of all?
I was point and shooting guard. Yeah, okay. I was both. We had an all-Canadian, the best point guard in the country I played with, and point was my natural position. So I didn't get a lot of time at point, but they would use me a lot to spell him, but also when you needed a lot of ball handlers, like end of games where it's real tight and you're trying to control the ball, they would put us both in together. And that was, that was my thing.
What was it kind of like coming up in I mean, Canada's now I think Canada's in a real basketball heyday, but it had been for a while. I mean, Canada's, I don't know, were you playing? When did you play? Like, when was your high school, college career? What years of that?
Yeah, so I'm like, I was playing in high school in, I think 92 was the first year I got like properly on the team where I was getting minutes. And I started at University of Waterloo '95 and pretty much I played 3 years. I didn't finish because after a while I was just kind of like, I needed to, I realized that I wasn't going to the NBA, and I got really interested in film and poetry and writing. And so there was a point where I split from ball to art. Like all that passion I have from ball, I just put it into music and art and creativity. And that was after my third year. So 95, 96, 97, those were my years. And we had some good teams. In Canada, we go to there's an 8-team national championship. And we went to it 2 out of my 3 years. So we had some ballers for sure. I wasn't a starter per se, because like I said, dude ahead of me was all world. But yeah, but I mean, for me, it was just, I just loved the game. I loved it. The game raised me really, because I didn't have my father around. So, my high school basketball coach, who I talk about in the book, him and his wife, I talk to them like all the time. Still to this day, I talk to them on Thursday. I'll talk to them once a week, guaranteed. So we just had that relationship, and I soaked up a lot of the fathering from my teammates. Because they'd be like, nah, dude, don't do that. You try this. Oh man, why are you doing that? Do this. And I learned from them what their fathers taught them. And if it wasn't for that, I mean, I could be on the path my brother was on, where, he was in and out of jail, like a lot of crime, a lot of hustling, which was my father's route. It really, for me, it really gave me discipline. It gave me like grit to know that, like, when you play sports, you kind of figure out that, hey, you can do more than you think you can do if you just push yourself. And that lesson and that discipline and that focus, I literally took it from basketball, which is all I cared about in high school and university. I was it. And then I put that into music and art, and then I put that into writing. But it's always, for me, I've been on that trip ever since they put a ball in my hand. I just loved it, which sounds like a Coach Carter, like cliche scenario, but you know what? It's facts. It's facts.
Yeah. What was it like being in Canada at the time of the Raptors and the Grizzlies kind of descending on the city? Of course, the Grizzlies didn't stay long. Yeah. But I remember being a kid, and when Canada got those 2 expansion teams, it really meant like, it really meant a lot.
Yeah, it did, because for us, so much of our culture, especially like, I mean, I can't speak for other people, but I feel like the whole country, like a lot of y'all sports as Americans, we're like the 51st state, really, like, because a lot of y'all culture, y'all country, we're so close, we interact with. But when we got a ball team, it was like, we didn't have to cheer for Detroit or cheer for, like whatever is the closest team to us. We could cheer for our own team. And, like we had some players, Stoudemire, like Carter and Tracy McGrady back in the day. Abdurrahim.
My guy, yeah.
Yeah, like he was one of the dopest players. His career got cut short by an injury that today, if he had it, he'd be back up in a year. But back then they didn't have that. And so it was a lot of pride, a source of pride, and a source of like, Canadians are less rah-rah, less demonstrably patriotic, less demonstrably like crazy about our sports, except for hockey. But that's certain people are on that, certain people aren't. But it was definitely a source of pride. And of course, the recent Raptor championship, I mean, I was downtown, like 2 million people came out, dog. I was just like, I don't like big crowds. So I was downtown. I got out real quick when I saw that. But yeah, it's just beautiful. It's just, like, it's just beautiful. And so for me, I just remember I hated the name Raptors when it first came. I hated it because it was like Jurassic Park had just came out, and that's why they named it that. But like all names, like people forgot about Jurassic Park, but the Raptors still here. So they gave it their own meaning. But at the time, I thought it was corny to name it after this movie.
Do you still love the game now? Do you still watch NBA now? Who you rock with now?
Oh yeah. I never don't love basketball. It's funny. I don't really cheer for one team. I find myself, I love the game wherever it happens, and I'm just cheering for the story, like the best story, the best drama, like the best characters. So I feel like it's less that I have my team. Like in the 90s, I was all about the Portland Trailblazers, which was a very like often tragic situation. But yeah, like I love the drama of it. I love the way the games evolved, the new players, and just all the excitement that comes with it. I'm not really big on the GOAT debate. Like everyone's always like, who's this? I just think that that's stupid. I just,
it's a miracle that we've lived lives where we've gotten to watch both Michael Jordan and LeBron James in their primes,
Yeah, I did. I hated Jordan. He kept beating my teams. I would cheer for anybody but Jordan. I was that guy.
Yeah. My last big question is, I was wondering if you could just talk about the state of Canadian music and what the future for it is, and where you see it going, and the actual impact, I mean, beyond Drake, but of course Drake, but the impact that Canadian music is having and continues to have on American music and world music.
Yeah, I mean, Canada's always produced great musicians, but for a long time, it was either rock music or it was the pop women, the women like Shania Twain, Celine Dion, Sarah McLachlan, Nelly Furtado. Like you could go on and on. The women were dominating for a long time. Alanis Morissette, all Canadian. And in the last bit, you've seen people like Bieber and The Weeknd and what have you, and Drake, of course. I feel like so to understand the Canadian landscape, you got to understand that there's a grant system that runs the industry basically, which y'all don't have. So not the way this is set up. So it's a national system because the country is huge, but unlike y'all, you're equally huge, we don't have as big a population. So if I were to drive out to say Winnipeg, which is north of, we're past Minnesota, we're almost to the Dakotas. If I'm gonna go north of Winnipeg, okay? And basically, if I stayed in Canada and didn't come through the States, there's probably 6 cities, 7 cities that I could play gigs in. That's a 30-hour drive. And so that basically made it really hard for you to sustain a fan base and build and make your own money. So they created the grant system. But the problem with it is a lot of the older heads control it, because once you get in and you get that position, they don't give it up. And so basically the same people that were running the industry in the 90s are running it now. Obviously things done changed. Like that's not how it should be. It should be more competitive. So I feel like that acts as a limiter of the potential, because people are less likely to take risks because they're trying to protect their situation. It's dope because it allows people to make a living doing their thing, and that's cool. But it also stifles sort of taking risk on new ideas, which is why, a lot of the people that have been discovered, like Drake or Bieber, were discovered by Americans who kind of pulled them out. Like, Cash Money discovered Drake, Usher discovered Bieber. Like it's very hard for a homegrown thing to cross the border. So, but there, as long as there's people making music, making art, like I think Toronto is an incredibly vibrant city. Like you never seen so many cultures in one place just cooking up what they're cooking up. And that vibrancy means that there'll always be fresh things cooking in that city in particular. And that city kind of, spreads out across the country and has an impact across the country. So Canada will always produce new art and fresh art, and Montreal's a scene, and Halifax is a scene, and Vancouver is a scene, and Calgary is a scene. So like we feel, there'll always be people coming. I just wish that we had a more risk taking. But what happens is you build it to a point, and then you just cross the border and you work in America. That's how it's always been. That's pretty much how it's probably always going to be.
Well, I will say this, I love the book, I love the album, and it was great to kind of read the book and then kind of be led to the album and have those worlds collide. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Antonio Michael Downing. The book is Saga Boy. And I got to shout out, thanks to Source Booksellers, one of my favorite bookstores. And I always love being a part of anything y'all do. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you, brother. I really, I've been listening to your poems for like the last 2 weeks. I really like Defiance, Ohio. It's the name of a band. That's my favorite. But yeah, I really appreciate your intellect and your how eclectic you are. I feel like you care about the same things I do, which is dope. But just the fact that you define who you are yourself, and you don't let anybody sort of put that on you. You're not trying to fit any molds, and I respect that tremendously, because that too is the cloth I'm cut from.
Of course. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Thank you both. I want to thank Milkweed Editions for allowing us to pre-sell the book and to celebrate it on the release. And I'm sure you've seen the Forward magazine. We've been celebrating you here. The albums, Saga Boy. I don't know if I say it right. Do I say it right?
Well, in Trinidad, they would say Saga Boy. Saga Boy. That one is a Saga Boy. But
I'm gonna practice that with my hand selling.
Yeah, if you say it to some Trini people, they will know what you're talking about.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. The book is fantastic. It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, isn't it? Like Milkweed. I gotta show you this. I'm not sure. Like, so here's a note. This is a note from Daniel Slager from Milkweed, and I'll read it for you, because when we talked, Daniel and I talked before I decided to sign with Milkweed, and I told him, I said, Daniel, the only thing I ask is I can't have no ugly book now. And so he sent me this note where he said, Dear Antonio Michael, I hope you agree that the book is beautiful. Congratulations, warmly, Daniel. So I appreciate him for that. It is a gorgeous book, and I'm absolutely thrilled with how Milkweed is gotten behind it. Like, I'm so happy.
Well, we are delighted. This memoir is one of the highlights to our nonfiction niche, and we're happy to sell it and continue to promote it. And I love to listen, and everyone else can, on Spotify and other streaming. So, Saga King, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Saga King. Yeah,
Saga King.
That's the album. We didn't really say that, but yeah, there's an album called Saga King that's like the celebration in music, and that's on Spotify, Apple, whatever you listen to music on, it's there. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, enjoy your pub day. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, and thank you, Source. Let's talk again soon, okay? When I'm in Detroit, which will be shortly, I'm gonna come through and check y'all for real.
Open those borders, please.
Please.
Also, the book can be found on Source Booksellers online as well. All right. Thank you.
Beautiful.